Yeah, so to get started for today's community call, as I just mentioned, we just got off a brainstorming session with the Center for Open Science. And so I wanted to kind of relay some of the ideas that they had for how we could potentially collaborate when it comes to like helping to incentivize certain behaviors. So I'll go ahead and list some of the ideas, and then we can just chat about them afterwards to see what you guys are most excited about. The first one is having some kind of reward for people sharing preprints on Open Science Framework preprint servers. They have like this kind of out of the box ability for any scientific field to create their own preprint server. There's one for like biohackers, there's one for sports medicine, SciArchive is a big one, where Open Science Framework helps support it. And in theory, what could happen is when people share preprints, they would be automatically posted to ResearchHub. The author of the preprint would receive tokens immediately, like they had claimed their paper. And then the actual preprint server would also receive some tokens as well in order to help make them more self-sustaining. I'm not sure if you all are familiar, but Law Archive used to be a preprint server that was supported by Open Science Framework. And it's just like case law, like research papers for legal stuff. But they didn't have the funding to pay for the server costs. And they had to like shut down the preprint server. And there were like thousands of preprints in it, which is, kind of horrific because it's just PDFs. Like somebody should probably be paying for that. And so I personally find this very cool because you could create a system where by sharing a preprint, you're actually contributing to the sustainability of the open science infrastructure. Like you don't even need to pay money. Like you're just sharing your preprint and some value gets kicked back not only to you, but to the actual people who are like helping to support the technology. So that was kind of the first one. And the way it would be implemented would be, have you all seen on their preprint servers where there's a plot it button? There could also be like a ResearchHub button essentially on preprints that said whether the author claimed it, and then some other things that I'll talk about in a second. That's kind of similar to what Anton and Nami are working on with post review. So that was the first idea, basically like integrating with preprints. The second idea is, and this is actually very similar to what Anton and Nami are working on with post review. In your guys' rubric, you have like, did the author share raw data, right? Or like, was there pre-registration associated?
We used to.
So
maybe we will.
What they were thinking is like, you could create rewards for people to verify if there was a pre-registration or like if the actual methods followed what was described in the pre-registration. And so have some kind of like validation ability to say like, oh, hey, here's the link that was shared with the paper that says, here's our raw data. When you click that link, does it actually take you to raw data that's relevant to the paper? And so confirming, basically creating rewards where validators earn coins for like making sure that everything's, shipshape. And then the author also earns coins from having people validate that they actually did their, pre-registration and open science practices of like data sharing effectively.
Do you mind the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the validators, are they going to be from the side of OSF or from your side?
I think from any side. It reminds me a little bit of like oracles in crypto. There's like these prediction markets where you have to know whether an event actually happened or not. And there are real life people who say like, yes, like Barack Obama won the presidential election. And there's some crypto economic incentive models to make sure that like the truth actually gets reported.
So there will be people on ResearchHub who have a goal of, essentially comparing the preprint to the published paper and coming up with a judgment whether it's accurate and following up and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that's kind of
okay.
And then those were the two main ideas. Did I guess Thomas or Kobe, did you guys hear anything else during the call that was pretty low barrier?
I think, yeah, no, I think that was the majority of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Looking at my notes now.
Yeah, the call was pretty high level.
So I guess when it comes to integrating with them, we probably end up doing something small first and like seeing how it worked and then growing from there. So curious what you all think would be like the most effective way to interface with Open Science Framework.
You mean from the side of the users? What do you mean by interface?
Yeah, like we can combine our services with theirs in order to help kind of grow the ResearchHub community and also help create incentives for specific behaviors that Open Science Framework is trying to make happen.
Yeah, I think it works perfectly almost out of the box. You could just make another type of posts, right? We have the papers, posts, and you could add preprints as a third category. And yeah, all of those submitted through OSF would just be there. That's perfect.
My concern is on the side, how do you stop like entire platform being spammed? Because you said that you would immediately get tokens. How do you stop the abuse in that case?
So I think what happens now with a lot of preprint servers is the preprint has to be approved for publication. There's like a editorial board that will look at the preprint itself to make sure that it's actually like not even necessarily like totally high quality science, but that it adheres to the regulations of the preprint server. So in order to have it be automatically posted, you'd have to create content that was viable enough, at least for the editorial board on the preprint server. So in theory, it'd be, I guess you could spam it, but it'd be a lot harder. Like you'd have to create something that could fool a couple PhDs.
I mean, there is GPT-3 that is already doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, just a slight worry on that side.
Have you seen there was an archive paper, I think it came out yesterday or the day before, it was at the top of Hacker News. It was like tortured phrases where there are entire journals that are filled up with purely AI produced scientific papers and like no one knows it. Somebody's like banking tons of publications off it.
I mean, even without any like auto generation of the content, you can just mesh a few different papers. If you have the incentive to get some money out of it, I wouldn't be surprised at all that there are people that would do something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm almost impressed with the potential creativity of the spammers there. There's something that they're also working on in conjunction with DARPA called SCORE, where it's basically an AI that reads papers and then pumps out like a reproducibility score. So like, super like high level, like it's not very trustworthy, but in theory, I think over time we'd be able to have some kind of mechanism to help like find, spam AI written papers if that becomes a problem.
Yeah, I participated in that program, and I was a rater, training the people, so that was fun. One thing about preprint server, I've been volunteering for like preprint as moderator, and this preprint server site archive, they use post moderation system where anybody can submit anything, but the moderators will screen out later. So I'm guessing this practice vary by server to server. So if you want to start like kind of small, maybe focus on one server first and just try to figure out, because yeah, like maybe there's a lot of heterogeneity.
So what you're saying with the post moderation, essentially, maybe you shouldn't give out tokens immediately, but after they have been selected.
Yeah, so that's possible. So post moderation happens like when you post a paper, it says like it's not reviewed yet, but it's available. And after some time, the moderator, one of the hours looks at it, and then it's gonna say it's moderated or it's approved. So you can use that scheme maybe to integrate that to interface with SciArchive specifically if you're interested.
I think there are potentially things we could do too, where like the tokens wouldn't be released until like 3 or 4 scientists have, approved that this is a good preprint, like a certain high rep users have to say, hey, yeah, this is legit before the tokens get released.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, that way we don't like blindly trust like whatever comes over to us, even though OSF is reputable. But it's nice to have that kind of control.
I think in general, like collaboration with third parties could be a really fun opportunity and experience in learning and understanding what is required to integrate with other services. So like whatever ends up being the first proposal for actual integration is a good learning opportunity. So, and not just with OSF, but in general. So that's really good.
Yeah, I think backing up a couple steps, like, is it important to you all that we integrate with other tools that exist within kind of this open science space? Like, is that important to you? Dragon, no. Philip, yes.
I think it legitimizes ResearchHub in the eyes of the crowd, for sure.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. Like it improves reputation and the distribution of ResearchHub, but is it necessary? I wouldn't think so. And like if ResearchHub only depends on the distribution through second and third parties, well, it needs more stability than that, perhaps. So yeah, maybe like it's good, but having more direct channels and a direct product of its own definitely wouldn't be a mistake.
I mean, maybe it's just in psychology, but the predatory journals, the one you brought up earlier, that publish stuff for money that is written by AI or by, I don't know, an undergrad or a child. So stuff like that is very prevalent. People are super cautious about it. So this is one of the reasons it's kind of hard. Like I wouldn't make a meeting with my advisor and be like, oh, hey, wanna check out ResearchHub? Just because I know people are super cautious, and if there is like a stamp of approval, oh, this project is works in conjunction with OSF, then people will be like, okay, that looks safe, right? I can share articles there, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I always go back to some of the advice that Brian's given us, where like you don't want to do any partnerships until you have product market fit and you have that organic growth, and then you can throw fuel on the fire to that actual value that you're creating. But sometimes, and I'm a first-time entrepreneur, I don't know anything, so worth a grain of salt. But like sometimes I think like that makes sense for a product like Instagram or Snapchat, where there's no like prestige necessarily required to have a user create like good content. But in science, like there is this like, oh man, is my career going to be totally screwed if I end up like sharing this data openly? And like, I want to make sure that if I do this, there's a relationship of trust behind it. So yeah, I have a mixed mind where, I have so much respect for Open Science Framework. And I think aligning ourselves with them like would do wonders for like our brand. And then I also think like pulling back from just a standard like tech product to kind of like a crypto community, if Open Science Framework eventually starts using ResearchCoin in their own workflow, that's amazing for us. Like if ResearchCoin, is independently being utilized by multiple different projects, like that is, that guarantees that ResearchCoin will live, even if the MVP of ResearchHub doesn't have the traction necessary, or we'd never find like that value prop that causes that organic product market fit growth. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things to think about, and positives and negatives in both directions. But overall, I agree. I think it's an awesome opportunity to align ourselves with like people who are very well respected.
I can totally agree with your point that it may depend on the industry, but just like to try to avoid the trap where by creating collaborations, even with very reputable companies, organizations like OSF, would be something like lying to yourself that you're building something meaningful and you're just relying on second or third party. Instead, like maybe it also does make sense to try to find a PMF on your own and then explode, like you said. So yeah, just like avoiding the traps.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thanks for sharing that opinion, because that honestly probably would be the healthiest way to grow. And even like it seems like we're very aligned with what Open Science Framework wants to accomplish. So I'm sure they would always be there willing to work with us once we did find that product market fit. Does anybody else have any thoughts when it comes to how we could potentially work with OSF? Cool. So the next.
Yeah, sorry, but just there is definitely incentivizing posting preprints, and they do have some sort of like collaboration features, and it would be great if there were some more opportunities around that. Like, I know if you fork a preprint or suggest an improvement or do the commenting on your own, they have their own commenting system, and like if you could combine that with ResearchHub into its own upvoting commenting system, like that would make sense. So not just producing direct content, but also like having collaboration, because, well, that is one of the like big differences for open science, not to work just on yourself, but to help others as well. So yeah, just considering that as well.
I think that fits well with the feature we're building out next, which is the ELN, the collaborative editor.
Yeah, great point. And I just want to add, like, there's a journal using that feature in PsycArchive. They use Hypothesis to comment on papers for the review process. It's already happening, but maybe there's like there's a space where you can go in and hey, we can do much better than that. So just point out. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the next thing I wanted to talk about, and we're lucky to have Andrew with us that just joined. Andrew and I have been collaborating a little bit for the past couple of weeks on ways that we can help build the ResearchHub community, essentially like doing a lot of the legwork when it comes to outreach to potential like ideal users. So Andrew, do you want to just give a quick intro and then kind of like describe how we're working together?
Yeah, sure. Hey guys, nice to meet all of you. So yeah, I just reached out to Brian and Patrick. It was like a month and a half ago, a couple months ago. And I am not academic at all. I have a bachelor's degree, and that's as much as I will ever probably get. But my wife is a PhD postdoc, and so just kind of watching her go through the publishing pain. I've always been really, really interested in why it's done the way it's done. So when I saw news that this was going on and ResearchHub was kind of trying to leverage crypto to, ideally get to be the GitHub for scientific literature, I was just, it really piqued my interest just from kind of a hobbyist perspective. So I reached out and just offered to help kind of spread the word. I'm in technology sales, so I currently work selling Google Cloud and Google Maps products. So that's kind of where that's kind of how we met. And essentially what I've been doing the past couple of weeks is just email blast to department chairs. So just reaching out to chairs and kind of introducing ResearchHub as a platform and trying to just very, very briefly encapsulate, what the mission for ResearchHub is and just get feedback, honest feedback from these department chairs. So that has only been going on for about a week and a half. And truthfully, Patrick, I was going through that. I was going through the active users and new join lists, and I'm not honestly sure how much of an impact the first pass has had. I had, none of the emails screamed out. Now, a lot of them are, Gmail accounts, so it necessarily wouldn't trace back to the emails that I was using to reach out to them. But yeah, just getting started and trying to think of ways to kind of get the word out there and also think of how, you guys as kind of like a core user base can position it to your colleagues and your peers and folks you work with. So again, I'm a total outsider, total noob to this whole world, but if there's anything I can do to help, I'm happy to do so.
And we've been super lucky to have Andrew helping out because he's been sort of pushing us in directions that, like, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not like totally comfortable with, but like bringing up ideas in order to help like grow the community that I do think will be super valuable. For instance, he emailed me earlier today about potentially sponsoring a conference. So I wanted to chat with everybody to see like if you all thought that would be a good idea and like which ones potentially would be worth looking into. But before we talk about that, I think it would maybe make sense to brainstorm for a second about like the demographics for potential cold email outreach. I know that like department chairs would be ideal, right? Because if we were able to get people like who could top down say, hey, my department needs to be using this in order to like help out with like value prop ABC, it would be the best case scenario. But oftentimes people who are at like the very top of the academic food chain, I've had pretty poor responses from them, generally like not totally into blockchain. They've had a lot of success in the current dynamics, so they aren't totally motivated to necessarily adopt something new where they might lose some prestige. So when it comes to like potentially crafting cold emails to try and build the community and have like a little bit more activity going on in ResearchHub, what do you all think would be the best demographic to try and target with that sort of outreach?
So you mentioned the area heads or department heads, and I don't think in our particular situation, I think it would be the best idea just because first of all they're super busy, and second, they didn't really have direct control, or it's not in the culture for the department head to give advice to the labs to how to handle business. So I think the most effective would be emailing the lab, the lab directors or PIs. Usually they are the last offer in the publication with multiple offers. So maybe this would be one of the ways to target them. Yeah, non-tenured.
What does TI stand for?
PI, primary investigator.
Got it.
Principal.
The main question I have, and I thought about it too, but Anton, maybe you know better. Like, how do you go about getting a list of PIs? Where do we scrape that data from?
We can also hire freelancers at like a pretty cheap rate who can go through websites and papers in order to put together lists.
Yeah, papers, existing papers. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I was going to say the best is really just going, I think, to individual university sites and trying to get the organization table from what's publicly published on their websites. So for this first round for department chairs, I actually have access through my current job to like a lead management tool that allows me to just export certain amounts of contacts. And so one of the things I was able to do was department chair. It was actually really, really easy to kind of drill it down to that. I think heads of lab could also potentially be a relatively easy pull from that in terms of just really, really quickly get in a list of like 200, 300, 400 names or whatever. So I might try that next. I think the PIs and the non-tenured faculty would definitely be more of a manual pull. And yeah, to your point, Patrick, hiring like a couple people on like TaskRabbit to just compile that or something could work.
Yeah, we've done that
too.
Or just Andrew, if you need any help putting together the list, let me know because we can hire some people to help put that together. I even had success in the past, like reaching out to PIs that are at undergrad institutions, so schools that don't have a graduate school. They tend to be like a little bit less publication focused and more like actual learning focused. So I had decent success. That was like 2 years ago though, so pretty long time. But yeah, like the tier 2 or 3, I think researchers are probably the ones that'll be most receptive to what we're trying to cold outreach with.
And do you have any way to just get kind of like a cross section of who kind of active users are today, demographically speaking? Like, where do they come from? What are they currently doing? Is that something that you can analyze or at least like just kind of roughly say, hey, I noticed a lot of people in this position or a lot of people who have this type of experience seem to be more, active on the platform?
Yeah, it's definitely early career researchers. So like PhD students, postdocs. We've had a couple like MD PhDs, a couple of PIs. One of our like biggest users is Vitali, who runs a lab at University of Leipzig, and he's like early career but has a professorship. So kind of on the younger end, like crypto friendly ideally, but that's hard to find. And trying to exit the current incentive structure of academia.
I mean, that should be pretty telling about who you should be looking for. And I remember us talking on past community calls that it is exactly early career researchers that should be, like ResearchHub should be focusing on, simply because PIs and people in similar positions aren't early adopters. They actually want to minimize risks and not to take huge risks. And perhaps reaching PIs and people in such positions would exactly be like trying to lie to yourself that you are doing something and making some sort of progress instead of still figuring out how do you make it possible for ECRs or people on a similar level to earn a lunch for their work in open science. So yeah, I think it's a mistake to actually go to PIs and similar.
Dragon, kind of in the same logic of build a product that has value and growth, and then do like partnerships on top of it.
Yes, very similar.
That's cool. I've also in the past had a lot of success just like going through GitHub and searching like biochemistry PhD and then pulling out emails from like the GitHub list. So yeah. But Andrew, I'll help you with that, and we can put together some freelancers to help us build some outreach lists.
Perfect.
Cool. Yeah, and so then kind of on that same note, are there any specific like conferences that you are aware of that have like kind of focused on that demographic of early career researchers that we could try and get involved with and get ResearchHub in front of?
Psychonomics.
Psychonomics. I'll write that down.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the most progressive and active and determined people in psychology and surrounding disciplines.
By the way, I'm not sure. I think the calls for all proposals are already passed, but for ResearchHub to appear on a meta science conference, it kind of makes super great sense. But I think the calls are already done. So sorry for a late notice.
Yeah, no worries. I saw that on OSF Twitter today, and I was like, oh, that would have been perfect.
Yeah, and just as a little context, this was actually, I was talking to my wife about it, and she goes to the Gordon Research Conference for her field, which is cultural heritage conservation, and so she's actually chairing the seminar, and she believes that most, because there's hundreds of Gordon conferences, she thinks most have these seminars, and they're essentially focused at the early career, either postdocs or current PhD graduate students. And so she was the one that kind of like got me onto the idea. And I think what seems really interesting about it is that, there's like low barrier to entry because it's a really, really cheap fee. It's like $500 and you get your logo on there. You get to connect with the chairs of the conference and the seminar and kind of evangelize with them. So when when people at the conference are like, what the hell is ResearchHub? You have people that can knowledgeably answer and people that you might have turned into an ally between signing up and when the conference started. And it's really scalable and repeatable, right? There's hundreds of them that happen every single year. So that was, I think, kind of the context to why maybe Patrick added this as an agenda item. But yeah, if there are any, like I like the psychonomics one. If there's anything like that you guys think would just tend to have like that more kind of liberal or open crowd, people who might be more open to the idea of something like ResearchHub and people. I think one of the biggest things that I've maybe maybe this is prejudice isn't real, but I kind of feel like the older generations probably aren't psyched about crypto, and just like anything that's involved with crypto kind of like freaks them out. So maybe going for a younger audience, or at least a more kind of open-minded audience, makes sense to me. Again, just superficially knowing what I know about this kind of industry. But yeah, any ideas or any thoughts are totally welcome.
We'll end up creating a like an outreach channel in the Slack too, so we can have kind of async discussion around that stuff and float ideas. One other thing that just popped up in my head, I'm curious for the people who are trying to get jobs out of their PhD programs. Have you all ever seen, like, there's almost consultants that work with PhD students in order to like make them more eligible to hire like an industry? I had a friend once who did something like this, and I was thinking, like, if we could interface with these groups that help to make, you know, PhDs more hireable, and say, hey, you can display your knowledge on ResearchHub. I'm not sure if that would be a value prop for them, but it could be worth reaching out, because that would be like the exact audience that we'd want: early career researchers who are looking for a job and need help. Have you all had any experience with those types of consultants?
Are you talking about job in industry, or job in, I mean, industry meaning non-academic jobs versus academic jobs, or both?
I think the one that I'm thinking of, it was for people transitioning out of academia to help them with like networking and like finding someone, you know, where their skill set would apply. But I've also seen stuff for like how to like essentially maximize your application to be a postdoc or something like that.
Yeah, because if it's from academia to industries, then they're not as interested in having their papers on display in the first place, right? Because it's not part of their resume. Well, not a meaningful part.
Yeah, totally. Okay, cool. So the last thing I wanted to grab,
just a question. How do you call those consultants? Like, how do you even find them?
I can't remember. There's a term. It's like, I'll send it to you afterwards, Dragon. But there's a couple of people who I've come across and thought about reaching out to, where they basically have a career of consulting with PhD students on how to like change your LinkedIn to say that you're, you know, looking to be hired and stuff like that, like small tricks to make yourself more eligible.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah, so the last thing that I wanted to chat about is during our team sync this Friday, we're kind of at like a little bit of a crossroads where we're not sure what we want to build next. We have this electronic lab notebook feature and a laboratory who's agreed to pilot it. It's the quantum biology folks. They're really cool. It's an awesome lab. They'll create, I think, like A+ ideal content. But we'd have to build the features like basically specifically for them and use them as feedback in order to refine it and hopefully scale it up to other labs. Or the hypothesis evidence graph feature, which we've shown to you guys a bunch of times, where the idea is like you can post a hypothesis saying, hey, masks help prevent the spread of COVID, and then add citations to it and be able to like criticize actual like logic behind potential hypotheses. So we'll end up kind of presenting both of these at our sync on Friday, and then making a recommendation for like what we think as a team we should pursue. So I'd love to be able to say, hey, like the community thinks this, you know, team thinks this, community thinks this, executive thinks this, you know. So do
Wait, so for one option, you already have people who want to use it, and they will be actively using it. You know it for a fact. And for other feature, you don't know. You ship it, and maybe hopefully people will start using it. Right?
We have a verbal commitment, so we don't know for sure that they will use it, but they've already invested maybe like 10 hours helping us kind of scope it out. So yeah, verbal commitment. If it's not good, they might not use it, you know, but ideally they would.
I feel like if there was hard pressure for people, if there will be like real demand for the hypothesis graph thing, people can already kind of achieve it by just arguing in comments under a post. They don't do it, right? So there is no like urgent demand for sure.
Yeah, and there is a super huge risk of overcommitting. Like if you're building features for a specific profile of users or a very specific user, then yeah, there's a huge risk there. But I can agree, like if there is already an expressed interest for for ELNs and not for hypothesis graph, then like, well, that sounds better. And again, back from some of the previous community calls, it seemed that ELNs had greater potential of moving ResearchHub in the direction which is kind of perceived direction which ResearchHub should take, in a sense that it's about displaying science and including the community into your working, and then creating this economic where you can, I don't know, pay for the content, Patreon for science or whatever. It just seems more in line of what ResearchHub should be about. Let's put it that way.
Cool. Does anyone else have any thoughts?
Well, I kind of agree with the Dragon, but like I wouldn't abolish like the other feature. But like Anton said as well, I mean, I think that if we get some more traction on the RH site with the proposition of integrating an ELN, I guess you have to pursue the ELN idea. Because it's now like some days we get some other people as well on RH, but like most of the days it's just Anton and Vitaly.
Yeah,
they post a lot. So I guess that integrating, like, I think like all the conferences, we have to get people on board. Like, I know that we have to have our own value proposition, but like, I think collaborating now is the time.
Yeah, I agree. And then also just to be explicit, we wouldn't be like trashing the hypothesis evidence graph feature. We'd just come back to it once we finished with the ELN. So it would just be delaying it probably for 8 weeks or so.
It's impressive if you can build ELN in 8 weeks.
It'll be a very much V1, but the ability to collaborate and share. There are a couple of open source tools that help make some of the really challenging engineering parts possible. And then I guess the absolute last thing is we are almost finished up with the author claiming feature, where in theory, like if you have a publication, you can say, hey, I'm the author, and claim it and earn tokens associated with that. So like I have a couple of friends who have published papers, so I'm going to ask them to claim their papers just to test it. But once it's ready on staging, I'd love to put it in the mod channel. And if you all know anybody who would be interested in helping us test it, I think that would be super helpful, because this one also has.
What is there, multiple offers? Can each of them claim?
Yep. Everybody claims their own profile and then earns a portion of the rewards that the paper.
Gotcha.
And we can also tweak how the rewards are given out. So I think they're like evenly distributed throughout all the authors right now. And like if like your friends are like, hey, whoa, I was the first author, like I need to be getting like 65% of these tokens, like that's great feedback for us to know in order to make sure that we structure it in a way where, you know, it's done appropriately.
You should also incentivize who claims first, so people will be rushing to claim as many papers. I'm just kidding.
That is so evil, but probably efficient, actually.
What happens a lot of time with crypto projects is like it's just based on time. So it'll be like in the first 3 months you get, you know, 10,000. In the next 3 months you get 2,000. In the next 3 months you get 500 or something. So a little bit of time pressure, but it ends up balancing out if the marketplace grows.
How do you verify that the person is the author? Like, this is a question.
So right now, you have to have an academic email address that's like publicly tied to who the author is. and we have moderators basically go in and approve, like, is this person's email address like who they say to be, and then we send them an email and have them like basically verify from that email address.
That makes sense. Cool.
Shouldn't we or have something in place that links the emails to their ORCID IDs? Because like ORCID has been an initiative to really have people on the right publications and stuff, and maybe reaching out to them, maybe collaborate or steal some ideas from them to have like the ID. I don't know.
Would ORCID be? When I created an ORCID account, there was no verification whatsoever. I could have picked any name, not mine, any other name. So I don't know if you can use it as a barrier.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if you see, it could only help, of course, maybe. But like, if you see that that person has all these publications and he claims the same publications, then the chances of being the right guy are higher than like if just somebody random makes up an email and then randomly selects papers that have that don't come from the same author on ORCID, for instance.
Yes, but I can agree with Anton, like it still doesn't prove anything.
It's hard. It's a difficult thing. We tried to integrate with ORCID earlier, and we can definitely do it. It's just anyone with an ORCID ID, ends up having it associated with their profile. But yeah, it's tough because if there's like a famous PI at Stanford who doesn't know about ORCID, someone else can pretend to be them. And even the way that we're verifying things now manually is not ideal. And this is kind of like a stopgap sort of solution in order to like help us get more traction and then more resources and then more engineers to build out something that's like foolproof, where we could integrate it with ORCID and it actually still has the protection that we need to make sure we're not giving out tokens to like random scammers.
So Coinbase has identity verification. You should totally get that feature into ResearchHub and do an actual identity check. That would be ideal.
So we have kind of talked about that. Like Coinbase Wallet is tied to like a person's actual identity, like their social security number. So there's definitely something we could do there. I think that would be a lot of work though. So maybe in the future. Cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I had for this call. Do you have any questions for us?
Just one thought about like login system, right? We are using Google login, and we are actually, so by doing that, blocking users from the countries who are using Google, for example, China, right? So just, I think we all know about this, but just that thought crossed my mind because like we are kind of excluding people from the participating in the platform.
So it's like geo-blocking, I think. You're saying geo-blocking is bad and we shouldn't do that?
No. Like, so in China, you can't use Google. So in that way, like Chinese researchers can't participate in ResearchHub. And I don't know, the other countries may be blocking Google. So just a thought.
Because we require the Google sign-in. So you have to have Google in order to, yeah, totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we've gotten a lot of complaints of just having Google sign-in. That's like one of the #1 things people complain about. We think internally that that's okay for the time being, and that there are enough people with Google sign-ins where we can still, in theory, try and find product market fit. And then like maintaining your own sign-in stuff is like not a trivial amount of work. There's a lot of security that needs to happen where it makes us like a lot more vulnerable. And Google has the resources to deal with that kind of security. So in theory, basically what we're doing is outsourcing to them for the time being until we have the team required to be able to build it out right and make sure that like, you can't just steal my screen name and take all my tokens. So yeah, 100% agreed that it's not ideal to have just Google as our sign-in option, but unfortunately, it's just the reality of the situation probably for the next 6 months or so. Cool. Anybody have anything else? Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining. This is super cool. And thanks for coming, Andrew. Appreciate it, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, definitely. Nice to meet you guys.
See you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you.
See ya.